Good evening. I have a couple of other questions besides what do we talk about when we talk about art in public places. One of my other questions is, who's we? Another question is, where is the place in which this discussion is happening? What part of the world are we talking about? And again, I'm using the word we, and I should probably stop. Because I think it is absolutely critical to be really self-conscious when we talk about art in public places, about the public. There's sort of this washing away of distinctions and saying, well, we'll look at it from one point of view and that's the end of it. The fact is that art in public places is not a zero-sum game. It's not either the public or the place or the art. It's really the intersection of the three. There's a remarkable profile that was published about 20-some-odd years ago in the New Yorker, a friend of mine directed me to, of the artist Robert Irwin, and it's called In a Desert of Pure Feeling. And among other things, he talks about okay, can you hear me now? The other expert at this. Okay, let's try that. Yeah, okay, all right. Anyway, all right, so there's this profile of Robert Irwin in a desert of pure feeling. And he distinguishes between public art, what we call public art, which basically he says all art is public, almost by definition. But it's now taking art out into the world, and how do we do that? And also, what constitutes the world? How widespread is the world we're thinking about? Is it a neighborhood? Is it a city street? Is it an entryway? It's those kinds of really fundamental questions, I think, that all of us need to be constantly asking when we're involved in this. Some background. I have an undergraduate and also a graduate degree in American Lit and Comparative Lit. That's critical for me, at least, because what those did was, for me, teach me how to, number one, read, which means how do I understand words, and number two, it taught me about metaphors, of putting disparate things together in order to come up with the third thing. When I applied to planning school, which was not all that, about 15 years ago, I had to write out how the hell I got from there to planning, and I said that, at least in my surmise, that planning is in fact metaphorical. It's bringing these disparate things together and coming up with a third, and certainly when we think about, again, the relationship of the art, the public, and the place, there are metaphors at work. How do we find out about the place? How do we find out about the people? Well, we ask questions. And the questions are, let us say, you live here now. Tell me about what your life is like here now. What do you do here? If you had to identify the 5 most important things, positive or negative, about the place where you live, what would they be? What are those words? Nouns, adjectives? It doesn't matter. If you could project forward 5 years and describe the place 5 years from now, what would those words be? That becomes the substance, the materials with which I, as a planner, planned, with which an artist, as an artist, begins to define and imagine what could most effectively go in this particular place. A long time ago, I ran across a statement which said that for this writer, the chief goal of any educational experience is to engender in the student, and that's pretty much anybody, an attitude combining curiosity and skepticism. And I got to say, the notion of being curious, of constantly being curious and of constantly asking and not taking for granted the given wisdom from whomever is absolutely critical. And I got to say, as a sort of sidebar, some of you may have heard this phrase, creative placemaking. If I had one thing I would like to do over the next, I don't know, week, I would love to eliminate that from the English language. Because what it's implying is that before I, with my expertise and brilliance and creativity, got to a place that didn't exist, the fact of the matter is that place has always existed. The question now is what was the interaction between the people who living in that place, living around that place, and the place? And use that then as the germ for coming up with something really creative. I really prefer to call it collaboratively reimagining a place. I know it doesn't trip off the tongue quite as easily as creative placemaking, but the essence and the substance of what we're trying to do is there. So I'm going to go back to the initial questions. What do we talk about when we talk about art in public places? And maybe make that what should we talk about when we talk about art in public places? And continue to ask the question, who is we? What assumptions are you making? What am I making? And what is the place? And where is the place? And what is the quality of the place? And how does that all get absorbed into what ultimately emerges as this interaction, this three-part interaction of art, public, and place? Thank you all.